achieve today to excel tomorrow. Our achievement today is going to be on ratios. Several important factors about ratios. Our first one is whatever the problem requires or states first, that's what we give them first. So if we have like squares, circles, and stars, and they ask us, what's the ratio of squares to circles? Then we give them squares first. Squares to circles. So we're going to say 3 to 4. The ratio of squares to circles is 3 to 4. If they said circles to squares, then we're going to give circles first. 4 to 3. Now let's notice this, 4/3. We're used to this being an improper fraction, so we would change it to 1 1/3. A ratio compares two things. So we don't want to make this a mixed number that ruins our comparison of two objects. We have two things. We have circles, we have squares, so to have 4/3 is perfectly okay as a ratio. The top number can be bigger than the bottom on ratios. What if we said stars to squares? We asked for stars first, that's 6. Squares is 3, 6/3. Now we can reduce this by dividing 6 by 3. Mr. George made a mistake. 6 by 3 is 2 and 3 by 3 is 1. So we're at 2/1. That's where we would leave it. We're not going to say it's equal to 2 because we're comparing two objects. We're comparing stars and squares. So it's going to equal 2/1. We would reduce it from 6/3, but we would leave it as 2/1. Okay. Also, there's 3 ways to represent ratios. We can represent it as a fraction, 3/1. We can represent it as 3/1, 3 to 1. And we can represent it 3 semicolon 1, 3 to 1. This is also pronounced 3 to 1. So there's 3 ways to write ratios. The last thing we want to talk about ratios is equivalent ratios. Sometimes they want equivalent ratios. So we would take the ratio 1/3 to get an equivalent ratio. As long as we multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing, we get an equivalent ratio. So 1 times 2 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6, 2/6 and 1/3 are equivalent ratios. 1 times 3, 3 times 3 is 3/9. 1/3, 3/9 equivalent ratios. We can also reduce. If we had 12/18, we can divide top and bottom by 2. That give us 6/9. 6/9, 12/18 equivalent. We can divide the 6/9 by 3, get 2/3. 6/9, 2/3 equivalent. Let's take 12/18 and 2/3 and see if they're equivalent. If we cross multiply, 12 times 3 is 36, and 18 times 2 is 36. If it's equal, these are also equivalent fractions. If it's not equal, they're not equivalent. That's how we could check if we had 2 ratios and wanted to know if they were equivalent or not. We could cross multiply and see if it was equal. If it's equal or equivalent, if it's not equivalent. Okay, that is an introduction to ratios we're going to achieve today to excel tomorrow.